Now I want to bring in Bill Press. He's the host of the Bill Press Show, former chairman of the California Democratic Party. Hugh Hewitt, MSNBC political analyst, host of the Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network, and Niall Stanage, White House columnist at The Hill. Well, Hugh, let me start with you on the conservative side of things here, and I'm just curious on the politics of this. You've got Democrats, we've got the reporting here. They're looking at the Republicans who voted for this. They're saying the polling that we've seen has been poisonous on this. The effect of this could be negative for some Trump voters, from some swing district voters. They say the politics of this are a sure loser for Republicans. What do you say to that?
I think that's Democratic spin, Steve. I don't even think it was as close as it looks, because when you figure in Karen Handel winning in a couple of weeks in Georgia's 6th, and then Mick Mulvaney's successor is going to win in South Carolina 5th. I think they had a Republican who was out on a family emergency leave. A few Republicans were given passes to vote against it, that they thought they were politically better. What matters most is what the Senate does. It would have been a disaster for the Republicans not to have passed this. Obamacare is falling apart. I had the head of the Center for Medicare and Medicaid on today, Administrator Verma, talking about Iowa has had another collapse of Obamacare. Tennessee has collapsed it down to some places without any choices at all. And so Republicans had to deliver on what they ran on. That's what Paul Ryan reminded them. So it's a big win for Republicans. There's no way to spin it. Democrats will try. I expect that. I expect my friend Bill Press will put on a happy face, but this was a huge win for Republicans.
Well, Bill Press, he says huge win for Republicans. How do you respond to that?
I've known Hugh a long time. He is living in denial, as he always does. I mean, the reality is, this is not spin. The reality is, and let's just go back. Two Democrats, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, had the control of both houses of the Senate. They squandered the first 2 years trying to force a complicated health care bill through the legislature, Congress. They did, and they lost in the midterms the next time around. The same thing is going to happen this time. Haven't the Republicans learned anything? And I think, Hugh, the smarter plan, they've got control of both houses, would have been take the time to come work with the Senate to come up with a bill that they were sure is going to get through the Senate. You know as well as I, this is not. I have to tell you, I do think, no spin, for Democrats, this is a dream come true, because Republicans, this whole thing will kick in when the first plan, the CBO said 24 million Americans would lose their coverage. Even more will lose their coverage now. That kicks in 2018, and these Republicans are going to have to go out. They own it. They're going to have to go out and defend it.
Well, let's look first here at this question, and Hugh raised it there first, about what happens next in the Senate. It's passed the House. You got to go to the Senate. And already, let's put up, I think we can put this on the screen. We're getting some signs here from Republican senators who are saying, hey, wait a minute, not so fast. We're not sure we're going to be right there behind this thing. You've got Orrin Hatch, Lindsey Graham, Rob Portman, Shelley Moore Capito, Ted Cruz. You got a list here nearly of 10, 12 Republican senators there. The magic number, the number of defections they could afford, is 2. If they want to pass this with just Republican votes, it's 2 defections or fewer. Niall Stanage, what are the odds that the bill in its current form or something close to that gets through the Senate?
I think they're slim, Steve, to be perfectly frank. I think that we do expect there to be significant changes made to this bill if it's to win over the support of some of the people that you just mentioned. That doesn't mean it won't happen, but, for example, one Republican senator told my colleague Alexander Bolton that he sees the chances at about 1 in 5 of it passing in its current form. I spoke before coming on here to someone close to the Trump White House. They put the chances higher at about 50-50. But I think that there's a real barrier here to getting this through the Senate. And that doesn't even go into the whole fact that we could get into the weeds of the reconciliation process. The Republicans will need 60 votes for some of this, whether they will need to strip out some measures in order to keep in line with reconciliation as an idea. So there's a lot of ground still to be covered here, even though I don't think anyone can deny that Donald Trump and the Republicans put some points on the scoreboard here.
Let me just play a clip here. They had that ceremony in the Rose Garden afterwards. Here was the House Speaker, Paul Ryan. Again, he was trying to bring this back to an argument about Obamacare versus repeal. This is what he had to say.
We have to repeal this law and put in place a real, vibrant marketplace with competition and lower premiums for families. That's what the American Health Care Act is all about. It makes health care more affordable. It takes care of our most vulnerable, and it shifts power from Washington back to the states, and most importantly, back to you, the patient. Like I said, we've got a lot of work to do. But one thing is now clear. Republicans are committed to keeping our promise to lift the burden of Obamacare from the American people and put in place a better, more patient-centered system.
Hugh, it was more than 7 years ago that the Affordable Care Act passed on all Democratic votes in the House and the Senate, and Republicans since then have been running on this idea of repeal and replace. How much of just the idea of doing something, saying we got the House, we got the Senate, we got the White House, we're going to do something, how much of that is animating the Republican drive on this?
Well, I do think that Paul Ryan especially wants to do well by the country, and I believe that if the Republicans in the Senate will let Leader McConnell lead, there's a much better chance than 1 in 5. If they hadn't gotten out of the House, it was 0 in 5. Now, if they let McConnell lead, there's actually a chance to broaden the scope here, for him to sit down with Chuck Schumer and say, rather than go with 52-48 on a reconciliation version of AHCA, amended, why don't we work together on this, merge it with infrastructure, merge it with immigration reform, merge it with a 350-ship Navy. What this does, what this vote today gives Mitch McConnell is the biggest hammer he's ever had and he's always wanted as leader of the Senate. And so now I'm looking at him as the master of the Senate to perhaps work with another master of the Senate, Chuck Schumer, to bring together some bipartisan fixes, because Obamacare is in a death spiral. That's where I agree with the Speaker. And I think Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell may be the two guys, along with the President, to bring together a grand bargain of the sort we've long waited for and haven't seen since the 1986 Social Security Reform Commission.
Well, Bill Press, let me ask you about that point, because this idea, the Republicans obviously have been running against Obamacare. Obamacare never became as popular as Democrats said in 2010 it would be once it was implemented. You got news this week out of Iowa. There's pretty much no competition left in that state. You've had the news of the premium spikes last fall. This idea of, hey, the Democrats can go after the Republicans and what they're passing today, but they're vulnerable on Obamacare. What do you say to that?
Well, first of all, it's no surprise to me that when they already start peeling it away, and they've been bad-mouthing it for 8 years, that some people are having second thoughts or pulling out. But the fact is, the latest Pew poll shows more people approve Obamacare now than disapprove Obamacare for the very first time. But what I think is funny is we're talking, there's a lot of talk here today about a bill that nobody has read. We do not have the text of this legislation. And this bill has not been scored. We're going to find out what this bill costs, and we're going to find out what a fig leaf this $8 billion is for pre-existing conditions. The Kaiser Foundation estimated it will cover, over the next 5 years, 164,000 people with pre-existing conditions. You know how many there are, Steve? There are 50 and maybe 100 million Americans. 80% of people between 50 and 64 have a pre-existing condition. So this $8 billion is nothing, and states can still opt out of it. When that hits the road, people are going to think, I think, turn against the Republicans who voted for this.
And Hugh, let me ask you, too, a question, because in 2010, when this passed the House and the Senate on that reconciliation procedure, Republicans made a lot of political hay at the time out of the idea of the process. They said this bill was 2,700 pages. All these Democrats hadn't even read it. It was being rammed through, all of this stuff. Here you've got a bill that really wasn't out till about 8 o'clock last night. I know it's shorter, but it really wasn't available till 8 o'clock last night. We had reporters there asking Republican members, did you read it? Did you read it? Not a lot of them were volunteering, at least as of this morning, that they had. And you don't have this CBO estimate of the cost of all the statistics around it. You don't have that, and you passed it. Is there a fair point here that Republicans are hypocritical on this front in terms of the process of how they're passing it?
No, I don't think so, because what we're going to find out now is that when John Boehner dropped that bill on the floor, it had no impact. What has impact are premiums that arrive in the mail. And in 2018, if people's premiums are down and their deductibles are down, their coverage is better and there are more choices, Republicans will not only win, they'll expand their majority. And there are 25 Senate Democrats, Steve, you know this, up for re-election in 2018. Only 8 Republicans. The field is still very uphill for the Democrats, and if premiums start to come down because of this law passing, Republicans are going to get a majority that's going to